I appreciate that.
Yep. It takes like 15 to 30 seconds for it to come up. So let's see here. All right, Mr. President, we are live whenever.
Cool. We got about a minute.
Hey, Tom, the price was right, too. That's what I like better.
I owed you one.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
You got really quiet. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah?
Okay. All right, it's 6 o'clock. Let's get going. Okay, today is April 19th, 2021. This is the Barberton City Council. We are going into our committee meetings tonight. And later on, we'll have the committee of the whole meetings. So our first committee meeting of the night is Street, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
Why am I so lost here? April. Yeah, it is on the agenda. All right, well, I apologize. I don't have a thing.
Well, there's nothing anyway.
Yeah, I can just go off of memory here. So I'd like to bring to order Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting. Today is April 19th, 6 p.m. All committee members are present, and council and guests noted in the GoToMeeting software. There is no request for legislation today. So I'm going to open it up for miscellaneous discussion with any committee members.
This conference will now be recorded.
Open it up for miscellaneous discussion with any committee members. Any miscellaneous discussion from council or department heads?
Mr. Greer?
Yes, sir. Is that? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Draber.
All right, 1 second. You there?
Yep, we got you.
Okay. I reached out to Mr. Tracy today. He did email back right away. I remember, if you remember, about almost 4 or 5 weeks ago, I talked to you about the resident on Lincoln Avenue having problems with the construction people doing the pipeline work. Doing the pipes and
you're talking about the one on the corner was asking about the concrete driveway.
Yes.
Yep.
She's had some more problems today. So if you can't reach out to her, please. Did reach out to Mr. Tracy. He's supposed to give her a call. But if you can, just touch base with her, let her know that we do care as a council. And, we're on her side. She's having some problems with a couple of employees. We're talking back and forth with her and mocking her dog and some concerns. So if we can, just if you guys can get on board and get together and make sure you guys take care of that for us.
Yep. I will make a note of that. I have all the information. So yes, I will reach out.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
And thank you, Mr. Tracy, for reaching right away, emailing back. I appreciate that.
Mr. Tracy, it's miscellaneous. You got anything for Street, Sidewalks, and Lighting Committee?
I could probably provide a couple updates.
Sure.
As far as the 2021 road program goes, we're still scheduled for the bid opening on the 23rd. It would be this Friday. That's 11 a.m. Once we're able to review the bids and make sure that everything meets the criteria of the bid, we'll be able to select the contractor for that project, and that'll be coming to council for approval to move forward to go move into contract with whoever that may be. We have a lot of plan holders out on the road program. Upwards of 10 different companies have taken out plans and bid books for it. So looks like there'll be some good competition. We're hoping for some good bids. I talked to Rulin Company today. Their subcontractor, Shelley and Sands, and I'm hesitant to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways. They're looking at potentially starting 5th Street Northeast next week. And that would just be milling and laying the leveling course for now. And then after that, they would go in and do curb work, any concrete work, and put the surface course in last. But with that said, the gas company only has 1 to 2 weeks left, but that not including restoration. So that is one to 2 weeks left of just the pipe work that they're doing. And then they'll be starting restoration following the completion of the pipe work.
Okay. And I'm going to step back here. The bid process for the roads. You said opening bid starts April 23rd. How long before we would know something? I know it's kind of vague, but are we a month, a week?
No, we'll have a pretty good idea on Friday of who the lowest and best bidder is. It's just we have to vet the bids and make sure they followed all the criteria that's laid out in the bid book before we can look at who we're going to award that to, and then that'll be coming to council for approval to enter into contract with whoever that contractor is. So if I couldn't do it till next week is a legislative week, so the following committee of the whole week I'd probably have a request in. It might have to be late because I don't have the bids
right
until Friday.
Well, we'll be looking forward to that. The Fifth Street milling and course material. That's and they're going to do that first. Traditionally, they do the curb work first, correct? Like they'll go and do the curb work, and then everything comes in for the mill and paving.
Yeah, I've seen it done both ways. Usually, you see the curb work first, but they can do the undercutting and everything with the milling and intermediate course in place, and then they'll come back and do the surface course over everything.
Okay. And do you know what the time frame would be from the time it would be milled? I mean, milling will probably be better than what's there now, but the time frame between milling and curb work, or how long the curb work would take?
No, I don't.
Hate to have it milled and then things get pushed back.
Well, it'll be milled, but they'll be putting an intermediate course down, so it'll be like it's paved.
Okay, I got you. Yep. All right. Is there any questions, Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. Director Tracy, when they do the curb work on 5th Street, can they do that at any temperature? Because I know with the lows for the next couple of weeks being lower overnight, I believe you said something that they need more of a consistent temperature for the actual paving part.
Yeah, the paving part is where the temperature is important, but they can do curb work, as long as it's not below freezing. They can pour concrete.
Thank you.
Is there any questions, Mr. Tracy, or any miscellaneous discussion? All right. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff.
And I'll second it.
And seconded by Mrs. Fry. Street Sidewalk and Lighting is adjourned at 6:07 p.m.
Thank you very much. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. J.
Mr. President, Environmental Health and Social Services meeting April 19th, 2021, all virtual, all members present, and all other guests and council members noted. We have no new request for legislation, and open this up for miscellaneous discussion for the committee.
I have nothing.
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you. Opening this up for discussion for other council members. Mrs. Bevick.
I was just curious how the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was suspended temporarily. and I know that Summit County Health Department had a huge vaccine drive going on. I believe it was at the Summit County Fairgrounds. How do you have any idea how, or would the mayor have any idea how that was affected? Did they get? Because I know they were giving some Johnson and Johnson there.
I believe all the ones in Barberton at the high school, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, that was all Johnson. Mr. Heidig, you have any more information on that?
Not sure which one they used at the Summit County Fairgrounds. However, on social media, I did see District 7 Councilor Bethany McKinney volunteering up there, so I would have to assume that they had Pfizer and Moderna, but I am not 100% sure.
I just know that they had like 10 days. It was like 10 days of vaccine, 10 days in a row of vaccines. And I just wasn't sure. And I think it even said on the flyer that it was, you weren't sure what you were going to get. Like when you made your appointment, I think they were just planning on getting that many vaccines. I was just curious. It was just out of curiosity. That's all.
Anybody else? All right. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Heidig, we adjourn 6:10. That I pass, sir.
Thank you very much. Next up is planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to bring to order Planning, Annexation, and Codes, April 19th. It is 6:10 p.m. We're meeting virtually on GoToMeeting. All members are present, along with other council members and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we have legislation, no request for legislation. Miscellaneous discussion. I talked to Mr. Hunt today, and Copart finally got the final documents that last week were signed by the city of Norton and by Barberton. So we can, in the near future, hope that we can see something starting there. And with that, I can open it up to miscellaneous discussion with anybody, with any of the members. Anybody have any questions on the committee?
I have none.
I have none.
Anybody on council?
No.
Ms. Angela?
No.
Angela?
Yes.
This
Mr.
is
Jaber?
This question for Mr. Trevor Hunt. Mr. Trevor Hunt, anything new with updates from the L&L trucking for the welding business that reached out to us?
Yeah, they were following up with the city of Norton. The building is located in the city of Norton. So they know. They're zoned industrial in Norton and then commercial in the city of Barberton. So I can check back with them tomorrow. But as far as I'm aware, they're following up with the city of Norton. I think the city of Norton will be amenable to having them locate there. So.
Any other questions from the body? No? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Mr. Greer?
Second.
Mrs. Coburn? And we are adjourned at 6:12 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is finance and personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and personnel is coming to order at 6:13 p.m. We are meeting virtual, and the date is April 19th, 2021. All members of the committee are present, as well as guests and all council people, and guest as noted on my sheet. We have no new legislation. I mean, there was no new requested legislation. And we have a draft ordinance titled Amending Ordinance Number 129, 2019, Employees Not Included in Non-Bargaining Pay Grades. I received an email from Mrs. Fox saying that she had updated the legislation with the new hourly rates. And this was in regard to the fact that the minimum wage was raised by 10 cents at the beginning of the year. So we have to make those adjustments. I also have, or we're going to be voting on next week, an appropriation for the fire department. It was referred to our committee by safety, and this is for, hold on just a second. This is really hard. I'm trying to use my phone and my paperwork at the same time. It is for the I think this particular piece of legislation is for the $1,000 from the fire department for the purchase of the smoke alarms. And also we are going to, no, it's not. Hang on a minute. It's an appropriation. It's in the amount of $24,741.28 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund to purchase additional emergency communication equipment and declaring an emergency. And we will be voting on that next week. Does anyone have any questions about that piece of legislation? I don't see any hands, so I'm going to move on here. The next piece of legislation is pending, and this is ordinance number 28-2021. It is titled Norton Water Sewer Jet Agreement, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city of Barberton and the city of Norton extending the current Joint Economic Development District Agreement, the JED. And we already had one reading on that, and it will go 3 readings. And there are some changes. We cannot change like the percentages or anything like that, but we're just going to clean up the agreement. And only one of the 2 entities, Barberton or Norton, has to go forward to extend the agreement for the JED. That's all we have for next week on as far as legislation is concerned. Does anyone have any questions, other questions for miscellaneous discussion for finance? I don't see any hands, so seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Medges, seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. And we are adjourned at 6:17 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our committee reports. We'll go right into our committee of the whole meeting. Today is Monday, April 19th, 2021. This is Barberton City Council. This is a committee of the whole meeting. I call this meeting to order at 6:17. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, give it a minute here. We'll get our flag flying. Not coming up.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Okay, everybody look at Mr. Greer's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yay!
Now it's up.
Better late than never.
Yes.
I think we're having internet problems here at the tonight.
Okay, clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mrs. Angeloff.
Here.
Mrs. Coburn.
Here.
Mrs. Debevic.
Here.
Mrs. Fry.
Here.
Mr. Greer.
Present.
Mr. Griffin.
Here.
Mr. Heidick.
Here.
Mr. Jaber.
Here.
And Ms. Okay.
Okay, since we're starting early, Council Rule 103 states that regular and committee of the whole meetings shall be at 7:30 p.m. Since we are starting earlier than this, we need to invoke Council Rule 702. Do I have a motion? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to invoke 702.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick, second by Mr. Heidick to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. Citizens addressing council.
We have a thank you card from Backham, Barberton Area Community Ministries, from Dorothy Somerville. She's the executive director, for our donation in memory of Mrs. DeBevick. And that's all we have.
Okay. We'll go right into our committee reports. And first up is Mrs. Angeloff with Planning, Annexations, and Codes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes met this evening, April 19th at 6:10 p.m. Virtual and on GoToMeeting. All members were present, as all other councils present, and others noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion. We have no legislation to request. Miscellaneous discussion. I informed council that Copart just this past week, their final documents were signed by the city of Barberton and the city of Norton. And Mr. Jaber asked about L&L Trucking, if there was any information. Mr. Hunt said the building is in Norton and that he will follow up with Norton. And with that, hearing none, we adjourned at 6:12 p.m. With that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street sidewalk and lighting today, April 19th, 2021 at 6 p.m. in virtual GoToMeeting. All committee members were present, council members present, and guests noted on my sheet. There was no request for legislation today. Miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Tracy provided a short update for the 2021 road program. Stated that they will be opening up the bid process, or the bids, April 23rd. Once the vetting is complete, and it's expected that the contracts will be awarded quickly, and there's a good deal of response from the RFP for the program this year. Ruling subcontractor. Shelling Sands may possibly start next week. Fifth Street project. They're going to be looking at doing a grind and fill first, and then working on the curbs, and then doing the final pave. Mr. Jaber mentioned an issue with a resident and the construction company doing the gas line project, and Mr. Tracy acknowledged. And last but not least, Mr. Heidick asked about the carrying temperatures of the curbs and the work being done. There was no other miscellaneous discussion. I did find my sheet here, and street sidewalk and lighting adjourned at 6:07 p.m. And with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is City Utilities with Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met last week virtually. We had one request for legislation that was to enter into contract with Burgess and Nyepel for the Wolf Creek Dam, that we would be having that voted on next week. We had no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, I pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevitt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last Monday, April 12th, 2021, at 6 o'clock, and we were on GoToMeeting. All members were present. We had several requests for legislation. The first request for legislation was a request for a City Council resolution to honor Officer Stephen Coburn for his actions on March 24th, 2021. As we are all aware, during a flight for a scheduled vacation from Cleveland to Las Vegas, Officer Coburn took quick and heroic action in helping subdue a passenger that was agitated and combative. And so we will be voting on this. The second request for legislation was a request from Chief Persley to enter into contract with Tim Lally Chevrolet, Inc. in the amount of $105,806 for purchase of vehicles. This Chief Persley indicated that this will be 4 staff vehicles, and this came in below the state procurement price. I think he said the last time the ages of them, and I apologize. Okay, never mind. I have it. I knew I had it. So the department will be trading in a 2001 Chevy van, a 2004 Jeep Laredo, and a 2008 Ford Expedition. All 3 of those vehicles have become costly and unreliable to maintain. The price that has been quoted includes all graphics and lights. And Chief Persley also indicated that 2 of the vehicles are in stock and the other 2 shouldn't take too much longer. So we are asking for emergency wording to get some safe vehicles for our department on the road. It is important to note that this was part of the 2021 budget. So we will be voting on that piece of legislation.
Councilwoman DeBevitt?
Yes.
If I could interrupt, it's actually to replace 3 vehicles, not 4.
Oh, okay. I don't know why I wrote 4. I apologize.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, thank you for the correction, because I literally have written down 4 staff vehicles. So
We have a total of 4 staff vehicles. This year, we're only replacing 3.
that must be why I wrote down 4. I apologize. Thank you for the clarification. The third request for legislation, and it was referred to finance, is a request from Chief Persley for legislation to appropriate $24,741.28 from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund to purchase additional emergency communication equipment. With the AFG grant, you have to meet and expend all the money allotted to you. So after our radios, we still had remaining money. So FEMA approved additional radios. Is that correct, Chief? I believe that's correct. I wanted to make sure I didn't mess up. Okay, I wanted to make sure I. Go ahead.
No, that is correct. We spent and met the grant requirements, or the grant allotment. Had the additional $24,000. We had to write an addendum, and FEMA approved our addendum to purchase additional radio equipment.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I didn't mess up any of my notes for that one. Thank you. And then we also had a piece of legislation that we thought was called for, and it wasn't, and it already had an ordinance number. It's ordinance number 35/2021, and it's titled Foundation Grant Request Smoke Detector Program. It's an ordinance approving the submission of a grant application to the Barberton Community Foundation in the amount of $910 for the smoke detector program. And as we all know, and we've discussed for several weeks, these are smoke detectors that are available for the community. This is the remaining amount of funding after the other sources that is still needed. And so this is to give the chief permission to make a grant request. And we did have a little bit of miscellaneous discussion. It was indicated that there were 7 vehicles on Gov Deals, and the auction was to end the next day, which I believe was April 13th. And then we also had some information regarding a raffle drawing at Ignite on August 28th from 5 to 9, held by Local 329, with a $1,000 donation being made to Backham and $1,000 to the college scholarship. And with that, public welfare and safety will pass.
Thank you very much. Next up is Mr. Griffin in Rules, Marketing, and Development.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on April 12th. We met virtual. All members present and all others noted. We had no requests for legislation. We did have matters of discussion. We talked about additional rules that would be needed to be updated. Mr. Heideck is exploring that possibility. And we also talked about term limits. Mr. Greer brought that up. And we also talked about and had a discussion on Wi-Fi and the AMH with the city of Barberton. So a motion was made to adjourn, and we adjourned at 6:41. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you very much. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met April 19th, 2021, virtual at 6:07. We had no new requests for legislation. We did have a miscellaneous discussion from Ms. Debevic. She asked about the vaccine shots, Johnson & Johnson, that was given out. And we adjourned at 6:10. And with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you very much. Next up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heideck.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation met Monday, April 12th, 2021, 6 p.m. The committee was present and all noted, everybody virtual. We had no new requests for legislation. For miscellaneous discussion, the Mumfest Quilt tickets celebrating 30 years of memories fundraiser will be available shortly. The materials are ready for everything. Take Pride in Barberton Day will be April 24th from the director, the league's registration software has been updated. And from the mayor, the skate park, we are now in position where the EPA has to do their due diligence with the land, because we all know that you can't do anything without the EPA sticking their nose in everything. We adjourned at 6:06, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met tonight, April 19th, Monday, at 6. Our meeting started at 6:13. We were virtual on GoToMeeting. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We had no new requests for legislation, and we do have 3 items that are going to be, well, 2 of them will be voted on next week, and 1 is going to have another reading. The first is titled Amending Ordinance Number 129, 2019, Employees Not Included in Non-Bargaining Pay Grades. This is for the increase in the minimum wage. It went up 10 cents at the beginning of the year. Mrs. Fox has emailed me the updated legislation with all of the positions being adjusted for the new rates. The second piece of legislation that we will be voting on will be titled Appropriation Fire Department. This is for the $24,000 from $24,741.28 from the FEMA grant, and this is going to be appropriated from the unappropriated item of the FEMA fund to the fire department capital budget of the FEMA fund to purchase additional emergency communication equipment. And the last piece of legislation, which will have its second reading next week, is ordinance number 28-2021, titled Norton Water Sewer Jet Agreement, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city of Barberton and the city of Norton, extending the current Joint Economic Development District Agreement, the JED. I opened up for miscellaneous discussion. There were no comments or questions, and we adjourned at 6:17 p.m., and with that, I will pass.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few updates here on the COVID side. There was a question earlier about Summit County and their vaccination clinic. So anyone that was using the J&J, including Summit County at the fairgrounds, switched over to Pfizer and or Moderna. So they worked with the state and other providers to be able to do that. They didn't want this pause to pause or slow down their ability to get the doses out, especially into people's arms who had already had scheduled appointments. So the pause continues, and you've seen that in the news. So the health departments and other providers that were using Johnson & Johnson have switched over. They do expect this to slow down, and they were kind of expecting this anyway, just because there's some logistical issues with all the manufacturers, and there are some production items that were mishandled. I don't know if that's the right word, but there are some issues with Johnson & Johnson on their production side, separate from the 6 or 7 women who had blood clots. So the flow of doses continues to come into Ohio and Summit County, but not at the rate that everybody was hoping when this first started. They got revved up pretty good there for a few weeks and got a lot of doses in. But logistically and everything with Johnson & Johnson, it slowed down a little bit. In Summit County, we are seeing some increases from last week, increase of 765 new cases from last week. Deaths in Summit County stand at 1,075, so an increase in deaths of 10 in Summit County. The average for the past 7 days in Summit County of new cases is at 106. So this is down from 125 last week, which was the previous 7 days. And so we had seen a steady incline of the average number of cases in Summit County for a 7-day period over 5 weeks. So this is the first week in 6 weeks that we've seen a reduction in that average. There has been some change. Franklin County, which is where Columbus is, was upgraded or downgraded, whichever way you're looking at it, to the highest level, purple. So they're the only one in the state at the purple level. At level 3 or red level, 33 counties are at that level, including Summit County. Level 2 or orange. I'm sorry. There are 50 counties, excuse me. Let me repeat that. Go back here. There's one county at the highest level, which is red. Or I'm sorry, purple. That's Franklin County. There are 50 counties in the state that are at the level 3 red, including Summit County. 33 counties in the state are at level 2 or orange, and 4 counties are at the lowest level, which is yellow. So we've had a few changes there on the color coding of the counties. And if you're seeing throughout the country, Michigan is seeing a surge. Other states are seeing still projecting downwards. So kind of all over the place. In some of the underdeveloped countries, you're seeing surges happen. Still more news coming out weekly, if not daily, on the variants. So if you have any questions on COVID, we're still in a state of emergency and still getting those updates and disseminating the information. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor. Any remarks from the good of the body? Mrs. Angelos.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to make an announcement that the Board of Zoning has canceled their meeting for tomorrow, but on Wednesday, the Planning Commission will meet at 5:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Medges? Yes, Mr. Medges, I can't raise my hand. I had sent an email to all of council regarding the Committee for the American Rescue Plan, and I wanted to use the end of each of our meetings to get ideas from council to present at the committee meetings for the rescue plan. I pointed out that at this particular time, we do not even have parameters or guidelines about how the money can be used. And I received an email from Mr. Greer and Mr. Heidick with ideas, which I will submit. And I was wondering if anyone tonight wants to put forth an idea. We're not going to make these meetings long. It is just basically a way of mentioning an idea that you have about how the money can be used going forward. But as I mentioned earlier, we have no idea what the guidelines are. And I did in my email point out the 4 different categories that we have gotten to date. However, those aren't even, those have not been, specific. They did not give us specifics about them. As the one sentence said, you could use water, sewer, or broadband. We don't know if you could use it for all 3 or if you had to choose between those 3. So everything is up in the air, but it's always a good idea to have a lot of ideas because of the fact that we want to use as much of this money as we can. This could really maybe do great things for our city. So does anyone have a suggestion tonight, or do you want to start, Mr. Heidick? Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Councilor. If I may, when we use this time for suggestions, with your, since you take this back to the committee, what I would like to see is if anybody has any ideas, since we don't have any parameters. I don't know how to say this without sounding, overbearing, but I think every idea should just be thrown out and not discussed because we don't know what parameters are. So at this point in time, I don't think there is an idea that can't be thrown out into the mix, because chances are we may be able to use it. Chances are we may not be able to use it. Who knows? So I don't think there's really a bad idea right now. So anybody's ideas, I think should just be jotted down and taken for what they are. We don't need to go into detail with any idea. We just need to mark it and move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Mrs. DeBevick?
Thank you, Mrs. Fry. I would kind of like to see, because at the end of the day, we are the legislative body, and we are the ones that will be asked to, vote yes or no on the decisions made regarding the $16 million. And so I would like, maybe if we all can't be part of the committee, I would like a report about maybe what was discussed, so that we can share that with the constituents. And I think it's very important, just as Mr. Heidick just indicated, that since the parameters are broad at this point, we can't really make decisions, but we don't know what's being talked about. And I'm just going to use the example of the CDBG CARES Act money. We passed a generic budget, and then City Council had no idea that what we did with the money. And that's problematic when our constituents ask us. So I think that it's important that we all stay in the loop. And I think that it's important that we, maybe we should use this time during the meeting to have you give us a brief synopsis of what occurred during the meeting, and then we can email you ideas. I think Mr. Greer's email was very well written, and I tend to agree with him wholeheartedly. So I think that's what I would like to see. So that's all I have.
Thank you. And I will just say that there's only been one meeting. And since there are no parameters, there's no guidelines yet, it is just, they've been the same as me coming to you asking you for ideas. It's just ideas at this point. I have nothing to report, or I would have already reported something. There is nothing that has happened yet. Nothing's moved one way or the other. The partners, if you have a problem with the partners that are involved in that, I explained that in my email as well, that some other entities are going to be getting money, and if we can partner with them to do something that would be good for our city, their city, the county, whatever, that will happen as well. So at this point, I will give a report when I have a report to give. There's nothing.
So there were no ideas thrown out at the first meeting. I'm asking.
Yes, there were some ideas. There were ideas thrown out, but, it's the same as if you throw out an idea.
Well, right, but why? If I throw out an idea, I'm going to tell all of City Council what the idea is. I'm not just going to call you and tell you what the idea is. I don't think that's what I'm saying when I'm saying a report. At every meeting, I'm sure different ideas. I mean, I know that you said there's only been one. I wasn't aware of that. And
there's only been one because we have, there's no reason to have them because of the fact that we don't even know what we can do with the money yet.
Right.
If I may.
Also, I just want to, sorry, Mr. Heidick, I just want to make one more statement, and alluding to Mrs. Fry's email earlier. I personally understand why we want, people from different entities involved, but the problem is public perception, and public perception is that the foundation's money is the city's money. It can pave streets. Public perception is that all of the funding is all one pot, and it's not. And what concerns me about having a committee that's made up of all of the entities and not only one city council person, is that just feeds public perception that why isn't the foundation paving our streets? Because they don't understand the fund accounting. They don't understand the foundation's money isn't the city of Barberton's money. And so I think that while I understand the idea that absolutely the idea of why you would want all of those people involved, I think it feeds public perception. That's my opinion.
I wanted to make a comment too to piggyback on your comment about the CDBG money. None of that has even been spent. They just made a master plan. We do not even get the money until like October. So none of that money has been spent. And I don't know what the situation is, if that was their final report, but we've had Melissa McFadden, whose job that was. He has left. So I really don't know what the issue is with the CDBG money. I mean, I don't know what you're specifically asking about it. Do you think some of it was misused, or?
No, I received the fund, what has been allocated so far, and so we have spent some money. I believe this came from the planning department, and we did use some of it, which I think it's great what we've used it for. We used it for the audiovisual project at the library, the HVAC system at the library, $60,000 for small business relief program. I'm questioning and concerning, and I was going to ask this during rules, which I guess I can say it now because you asked me. $30,000 to the Greater Akron Chamber. I addressed my questions in my email back to all of City Council under the council updates. So, and then a couple of restaurants received $750 for disinfecting for COVID. And I was just curious if all of the restaurants in town were notified. And the one thing that is concerning to me, and I know that it's what you're allowed to use for program administration, but $77,000 of our $386,000 allocation has been allocated for program administration. That's a third of the money that we received for COVID relief. And we already took administrative fees from the regular budget. So to answer your question, the things that we funded, I think, are good and fine. I just think that when we pass a generic budget, that City Council then never knows how the money's spent.
And this is Trevor.
Would you like to?
I can address some of the concerns. CDBG is meant to be flexible. So there are stipulations that you have to meet. I think the goal of the planning department, obviously, is the administrative body is to bring the legislative body council, and including the mayor, into as many conversations as possible. I don't know that council nor the mayor necessarily need to get into every decision because again, CDBG is meant to be flexible, but you're to try to set the groundwork and lay the groundwork for how the money's to be spent. And I think, I kind of walked into this, so I wasn't here April 27th last year when the nation was in the middle of this CARES Act money being released. And there's a lot to work through. And there's also a lot of commotion at that time because of the nature of the beast. So other communities, we've talked to other communities, they're in a very similar situation. But again, CDBG is meant to be flexible. This process has been transparent. I've read all the documents, reviewed all the documents. The partners we identified early on were those partners in other municipalities that communities I've worked with. So I find us to be kind of upholding the standard in regards to this. And by no means have we kept anything secret from council nor the community at large. So just, everything's above board here, and, we're following all the protocols as required by the federal government.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. And Mr. Heidick, you had a comment earlier. Mr. Heidick?
Yes, thank you. I had been in contact with Director Hunt there to get a little more detailed information that I was going to work with him a little more so that we could put a kind of a report together for the rules and marketing, since the CDBG goes through there. That would be next Monday. But I have been working with him to get more detailed expenditures, how the money's allocated, what's been happening. I planned on emailing Director Hunt more this week to get a good grip on. That way we kind of all know, certain things like, there were, Director Hunt said certain software and laptop programs to basically eliminate the need for being in the office. With the courts operating, there's lots of transient people and traffic going through there that, if we get one person sick coming through there that's going to court, it could easily spread to the third floor. So getting employees remotely is probably a good thing, since our planning department does run sometimes on quite the skeleton crew. But to get back on topic of different things to use the Rescue Act money, I did speak with Councilor Fry there, and she has noted that Director Weaver is looking into shoring up the dam. And I know nobody really wants to say, that's a project or anything, but that dam, as we all know, is a nightmare. And I think this is going to be one shot we have to be able to do what we need to do to make necessary upgrades and repairs to it. It's going to cost a lot of money, I know, but that is one thing that probably for the next 30 years, we're not going to have this kind of, lack of a better word, windfall to be able to handle something like that. So my suggestion is looking as much as we can into improving the dam with that infrastructure money with the water. Thank you.
Before we jump back off, if I could, before council, I just wanted to address one other concern that was brought up with the COVID money. I think it's alarming to the public to say that a third of the money, the $77,000, was for administration, because I think you might see that at first glance, but you have to look deeper into the numbers. We've actually only drawn 10% of that. That $77,000 is what's allocated based on the CDBG COVID program. That's what's allocated for administrative duties. And not being in the COVID crisis and really not knowing what's coming your way, that's why they allotted that much money. So I want the general public to be aware, we've only drawn $7,320 of that dollars for administrative requirements. And those are mostly essentially tools to allow the city to operate, things such as laptops, when we're in our office space, dehumidifiers, things to make the office space clean to prevent the spread of COVID. So just want to throw that out there that, of that $387,000, we've only used $7,000 of that for administrative purposes.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt. Mr. Hunt, so the last email that we received regarding the CDBG budget, CARES Act budget, was in, I believe it was June 5th. I'm doing this by memory, so I could be wrong with the exact date. And it said that $200,000 was going to be used for small business loans. That's not what I saw on the breakdown that I received. So I was just curious, did no one apply for them?
Yeah, so to follow up on that, I think that we've had less than the anticipated crowd to have applied for those. And part of it is that we have had applicants, but there are stipulations to meet. Some of those are set forth certainly by the federal government, most of all of which are set forth by the federal government. So we have to make sure that businesses meet those stipulations, and where they fall short, it's kind of a non-starter for lending on that. So I think that we were hopeful that maybe there'd be more businesses that would have come out of the woodwork in the get-go. We just had a recent application from Dave's Diner on that front, and we're looking to get them involved here. But again, there's certain boxes that each company has to check, and that's kind of where that stands.
So is our Backham and Salvation Army, are they eligible for money from this fund?
Those are nonprofits, and I think there'd have to be a specific need that you just can't give money to a nonprofit per se.
I would say the need was they were begging for food during COVID because so many people were using them, but I don't know if that qualifies.
If I may, the attachment that I got from Director Hunt there, that money does explicitly exclude nonprofits. It explicitly says for-profit businesses only.
That's what I was asking.
There is a separate funding source for nonprofits.
Thank you. That was my question.
If I can say something, Mrs. DeBevic, can I address this?
I lost my screen.
Okay. I was on that committee for the funding for that $200,000. And we met once a month with the different applicants in that. Some of them didn't qualify. Some of them actually got funding through the county. So it was very, we were on the phone a while, looking at all the applicants, deciding on, if they qualify or not. We even helped some of the businesses that didn't qualify. Some of them maybe weren't truthful when they said that they had received funds in that. But I can tell you that the planning department reached out to a lot of these businesses, had them apply, did a lot of research on that through the state. And then if they qualified, then they received the funding. But there was a lot of stipulation. I have the rules and regulations. It's like a little notebook. So they did work very hard, Melissa and Stacy, on getting applicants. They went out and asked. So they did do their part on that. And some of them wanted, maybe they didn't qualify for the 10,000, they qualified for 5,000. Some of them went to the county. So there was a lot of work involved in that. And I just want to, let the people know that, sitting here looking at figures is a lot different than sitting and actually working in the system and working with the state and the federal government. And one more thing I wanted to say about the new American Rescue Act. I do have a suggestion, and instead of emailing it, since we're all together as a group, I'm just going to say that I would really, really like to see South Van Buren with sidewalks, curbs, infrastructure, the drainage, the storm sewers, new water lines, that whole 9 yards down in that area. I think that is another way to come into this town. I don't think it's very attractive, and that needed to be done a long, long time ago. So I would like, with infrastructure, with that, I would like to put that money into that area down there. We have the Russell dump down there. We have some property down there that can be sold, and some new businesses coming in there. I just think we need to concentrate. I'm just saying personally in that one area, because it seems like it's been neglected for a number of years because it's so costly. And if this is something that we can do with federal funds, I think that's probably the way to go with that area down that way. So that's my thought. I just thought I'd go ahead and just open it up and let everybody know that's what I'm thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Okay, yes, go ahead.
With the South Van Buren, I believe Councilor Angeloff is 100% correct, and I do want to say that even if parts of that project won't qualify for it, I really, really have my fingers crossed, as I'm sure Councilor well, that if the infrastructure package passes Congress next, that might couple with it to do it. You know, I hope that between the two that it can get done, and I think that's something that should be at the top of the list there. But I do like the idea of, you know, South Van Buren being looked into, whether everything can happen with it with the first shot. I hope. And like I said, Councilor Griffin and I both live down here. We know the need. We see it. We travel it every day. Hopefully the president's infrastructure package would make up any difference that we need. So that's a very, very good point to look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. And I'd like to add that if those improvements were made, I don't know if the land can be reclaimed, but possibly it could. And we are landlocked, and we could use anything that we could get. So that would be a good place to, you know, put some resources.
Councilwoman Fry.
Yes.
I can make a few comments if everyone else is done. If everyone else
sure.
Answer questions.
Sure.
You know, there's a lot of things moving quickly, and it's easy to kind of we all do this, kind of sit back and kind of play Monday morning quarterback. You know, we kind of lost a year, and with no additional staff members, we were able to run our normal operations last year and take on these additional funding sources and all the different rules and regulations, which changed sometimes daily. And that's continuing with the American Rescue Plan, the continuation of CDBG COVID, the regular CDBG, the new infrastructure bill that hasn't been released yet. So there's a lot of juggling here on those fronts. I would ask that if there's a perception on that you know, the city's money or the foundation's money is the city's money, I would hope that council would update the residents and let them know and explain that. And I ask council, if you're going to put something on social media, make sure that it's the correct information. You know, the reason we're waiting for guidance is because they've given us very, very general guidelines. So there was a post and it says make investments in water, sewer, and broadband. But that's not how it came out. It's actually, the way it came out was or broadband. And that one word, or and, is at kind of the heartbeat of why we're looking for guidance, because they mean two totally different things. And so it was issued with the word or. And so we've been asking, you know, do I have to pick? Do I have to pick water or sewer or broadband? So, and they never even explained, you know, what is meant by sewer. Is it storm sewer? Is it sanitary sewer? What do you mean by water? If it's fixing or replacing a water line and I have to dig up the street, am I allowed to replace the street that I just dug up to replace the water line? So they never really made the distinguishment of infrastructure. So those are the guidelines we're waiting for. We're working with our counterparts, other cities, the county, our state legislators, our federal legislators. And from what I've heard, because the rules for CARES Act funding kept changing, and like I said, sometimes on a daily basis, that the Biden administration put this out there, but they haven't released the clear guidelines yet because they want to do it one time. They want to get all questions answered, issue the guidelines, because there is a time factor to use the money. So we'll see if that's how it pans out. So, you know, we put this committee together because it's important that it's not Bill Judge or the mayor making a decision, that we get council's input, that we get the school's input, DCDCs and the foundations, because, and then I've asked my department heads to put together a list as well. And the only stipulations I gave the department heads, and I agree with you, Councilman Heidick, nothing's off the table. Let's make a list of 1,000 different ideas. And once the guidelines come out, we can whittle that down to what is allowable. The only stipulations I gave my department heads were make sure it's sustainable, project or program, and can that project or program be leveraged by other funding sources? So instead of spending and us being the only funder, is there a possibility of another funding system or sector to play a part in whatever that idea is, which just lengthens the our dollar for more projects. So we're looking at a lot of different things, passing ideas. You through our counterparts and some discussions I've had with other mayors and those at the state and federal level and county level. So, you know, this is real interesting, and it's something that we've had one meeting, but it's only because we've generated a list of ideas. We want to get those more ideas from council, and then we'll sit down and start hashing this out once the rules are let go. So we anticipate that soon, because that first check is due in the first part of or sometime in May. So you know, we created that fund. We'll let that fund sit there. And the other thing is, you may believe that this idea can be supported by the funding within the guidelines. I may believe another idea. We have to make sure that anyone that audits us from the federal government believes the same. So there's a lot of checks and balances that we don't want to get in a pinch down the road that someone interprets, or we misinterpret it, or someone interprets the way we use the money in terms of the guidelines incorrectly. So there's a lot of discussion that's going to be happening over here over the next few months, and we're supposed to get the second part of the money within a year of the first one. So no date on that. So a lot of things at play here. So.
Thank you. Mrs. Miller? Mrs. Miller?
Yeah, thank you. Have the guidelines that were issued first been distributed to council?
The guidelines, in my email today, I gave them the 4 categories that the guidelines consisted of, but they're very vague.
Not the four categories, the actual guidelines.
I don't have a copy of guidelines. Do you, Bill?
There are no guidelines.
I don't have any.
Pardon?
There are none yet. There
are
none
no guidelines.
But, well, you referred to them. That's why I'm asking.
It's just those 4 categories.
We referred to the categories, not the guidelines. There's categories, but there's no guidelines on those categories. It's just a listing of the 4 different ways the money can be used. But no guidelines.
The meeting that you had, were there minutes?
Yeah, we took notes.
Okay.
So, if I might just add, the social media post I'm sure that the mayor's referring to is mine, and I wrote down in the last meeting what Mr. Flaker shared were the 4 categories. So perhaps he said and instead of or, but I think that that's something that this goes back to one word, communication. We should all have access to it. It's not that hard to send an email and let us have the written. Mrs. Fry did a fabulous job today, but this was in the email she sent, but it's after the discussion has already started.
Councilwoman DeBevick, you know, the guidelines are so vague, you know, that's why we said let's open it up. So any idea, because you may have an idea that some may not interpret it as fitting within the 4 categories or however you want to phrase it, but maybe if you tweak it just a little bit. So, you know, I just want as many ideas as possible. All this information is readily available. It was in the newspaper, the Beacon Journal. I believe it was in the Herald. I'm not sure. It's on the Ohio Office of Budget and Management. I've mentioned it over the past 3 or 4 weeks at City Council. So I agree, communication, but we don't have a lot to express as we're waiting for ideas from council and the other members.
I just want to say that when there is something to report, I will report it. But to date, there's really nothing to report. It's just some ideas that people put out there, and they're very vague ideas. It's not like build a justice center or do this or that. It's just an idea like Mrs. Angeloff brought up about possibly concentrating on a part of the town that we own land, but we have multiple problems that we might be able to fix with this money that we are getting. So maybe this isn't the format that we want to use. Maybe I should just give a report when something comes up, or if you would rather email your ideas, then I'll give a list of what people have emailed, or if you want it to be a group email and everybody gets them, that's how we'll handle it.
I personally would like minutes from the meetings.
I think even if ideas are thrown out in that meeting, that it deserves to come to us just for the sake of redundancy. You know, we may be sitting here thinking about one thing that has already been discussed, and now we're spinning our wheels. If there's any ideas in this committee, I think it should be brought to the council. No matter, again, we said there's no bad ideas right now. Well, even if two were brought up in the first meeting of the committee, then that should be brought to us so we can think about that as well, and not try to expand on something that's already in the works of being discussed. Thank you.
Mr. Tracy?
Yeah, I just want to make a
Mr.
comment.
Tracy.
I just want to make a comment and circle back to, I don't know, 10 minutes ago or something. I just want to make sure that everyone understands that when Councilman Heidick said the dam is a mess, the dam is structurally, it has its integrity. It's perfectly fine. Just the insurance company changed their restrictions on how they cover the dam. There's not threat of imminent danger with the dam or anything. It's just time to make improvements to the dam after 80 years. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we're not at risk of losing the dam tomorrow or something. That's all.
Director Tracy, I do apologize. I should have chosen my words a little better. It's like you said, it is 80 years old, and when I say it's a mess, I don't mean a danger, but you
I knew you didn't. I just want to put it on the record.
Yeah, you get what I mean. I that was a poor choice of words, but as you can agree, and Director Weaver can agree, it could use some upgrading. It's not a hazard by any stretch, but it definitely could use upgrades that in the past we wouldn't have been able to do.
Correct.
So
Thank you.
I do apologize. That was a poor choice of words.
Yeah, if I could add on that dam,
Okay.
the dam.
Hold on, Justin.
Yep.
Okay. About less than 10 years ago, Betty Sutton got us, I believe it was $700,000, and all the valves underneath that dam were repaired and replaced. So, under that dam is where most of the guts of it are, and a lot of that has been taken care of. I know it still needs work, but we did put a lot of money into that not that long ago. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Medges. Mr. Greer.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Wright. I'm going to double down. Just kind of speak on what some of the other council members, Mr. Heidick mentioned. I think in general it would be nice to have all this information and mainly just the minutes. As long as the minutes provide the context, provides the background, provides the other options or ideas that other people have brought up, and ultimately it kind of feeds off each other, right? So someone has an idea, I might have another idea. That's why conversation is important on any topic. It feeds off each other. And is always fluid. So I personally would like to see minutes happen. I didn't catch any the times or set schedule for this committee to meet. Is it just on call or is it a scheduled meeting? Are you guys set to meet once a month?
We are supposed to be meeting once a week, but we've only met once because we do not have anything to go on.
Okay.
And we've only had one meeting, and they've all the others have been canceled because of the fact that nothing has moved forward.
Right. And just the last thing. Where can council go to get up-to-date information that the administration is currently using to justify these meetings? Where I know they didn't give us a napkin with the guidelines written on it. They had to provide some form of information to the municipalities on what it can be spent on. I know that there's four categories. But there has to be some other context. Where could council go to see these in real time, like a working copy of this information coming through?
If you just Google American Rescue Plan, that information should be available.
I did Google it, and it came up whitehouse.gov. A lot of the American Rescue Plan stuff comes up with basically the stimulus check, so it really washes out a lot of the actual information that municipalities. Are you saying that's all we were going off of was by Googling? And we never really received guidance like actual memo.
No, of course not. But we get emails from Ohio Budget and Management, Office of Budget and Management, State of Ohio. We get information from Retzel Law Firm. We get information from Squire, Patton and Boggs Law Firm. We get information from a lot of different sources. There's been webinars on this, and they're starting to pick up, which is amazing because there's been no guidance. So, we kind of joke around here that there's these webinars that we sit on to see if we can learn anything new, but there's been no official guidance. But a lot of law firms, lobbyist firms, consultants have put information out, and to date, it's all the same information.
Right. So when the American Rescue Act passed and was put forward to distribute money, are we saying that they really distribute anything other than the hundreds of pages of this at the federal level? They just cut us $16 million and where are they getting these categories from?
Those categories, I believe, were put in the bill by the president, and I'm not sure what, if anything, that he put in was changed by Congress or the Senate, but that's what was passed. So they took that bill and made a summary and emailed that out to the local officials.
Okay, so we're just literally trying to interpret the American Rescue Plan, the bill itself currently.
No, it's basically being interpreted by all these other agencies, and then a synopsis is put out. They do provide, you can always look up the full text.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Frank. Thank you, Mayor.
Well, and as I stated, we, communicate with our federal and state and county leaders and talk. There's a mayor's association. There's a lot of discussion going on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I would imagine. Yeah, it does, Mayor. I would imagine that $16 million came with some form of document. But if it's just interpretation from other local law firms, municipalities, and the bill itself. I know it moved fast. I just figured that there'd be something more set in stone that we're going to be using even now to go off of.
Well, if you're asking if they sent a letter to the city of Barberton saying you are going to get this amount of money, these are the rules, something official like that, no. But this has been well documented in the paper on what each community is going to get. But that's changed. We originally heard that they were going to do it through CDBG, and that didn't happen. So we haven't, unless Mr. Flaker or Mrs. Miller received something official saying, hey, the city of Barberton is going to receive this amount. These are the guidelines and rules. But I've received my information through communicating with the county, state, and local officials, and then what I've received, from these law firms and consultants.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Mrs. Miller.
Mayor, I'm asking this just to see if you know, and maybe this might help council understand it. I saw Mayor Horgan's press conference, a little bit of it. Did they announce their plan for their spend plan? Because I thought that's what he had, that press conference at the Akron Civic. So maybe they've kind of firmed up their categories. I'm not sure.
No, I believe that, I can't speak for the City of Akron or Mayor Horgan, but I believe in his press conference, he said things like this, okay? We're going to spend this percentage on public utilities.
Okay.
So it was still very general and still very broad. I believe that he also stated that by July, he'll have a more defined plan. So,
okay. I just saw a snapshot of that, and I just wasn't sure how he handled that. I thought maybe that might help, anyway, me or anyone else understand it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fry.
Yes. Hello, Mr. Flaker.
Hello.
You want to add something?
Yeah, I just want to add on what Justin was saying, asking about where we got the criteria, and to piggyback on the mayor. Yeah, I've received multiple emails. Ohio Budget of Management, Ohio Municipal League, Ohio GFOA, the various organizations I'm a part of. They gave those guidelines. Basically, right now, they passed that hundreds of pages of documents enlisting what it can be used for. We're just waiting for the IRS guidance to come out. They're going to be the ones that's going to determine how they interpret those 4 categories. So we're waiting for how is the IRS interpreting those 4 categories. So once the IRS can provide guidance on because that's where all the guidance from the CARES Act was coming from, was the IRS. They would issue the various statements. Okay, this is what it can be used for, and they would issue a multi-page thing of listing of what it could be used for. So once the IRS can dig through the American Rescue Plan and determine their interpretation of what it's for, and they issue that guidance out there, that's what we're truly waiting for. It's the federal government interpreting their own act that they passed.
I thank you so much. And actually, that's why I wanted to have these meetings at the end of our meetings, because you would be present as well as the mayor, because basically I just sit on the committee to represent you, to report to you if I learn something within the committee meeting. And as I said, there has been one meeting. I do not have minutes. I do not take the minutes. I sit there and listen and hear what all of the other people that are present are saying. And if I had an idea, I could throw that out there. However, in order to get council involved and to make you feel like you are a part of this, that's why I thought that maybe we should meet at the end of these meetings so that you could voice your opinion about what ideas you have to use the money. But you have to keep in mind that at the present time, there are the 4 categories which are not defined properly. And any idea would be good. And after we get the guidelines, after we know what direction we're going in, then we will be able to talk in terms of which direction we want to go. Right now, it's just we have been told that we're going to be given a certain amount of money, and that remains to be seen too. We will get it in 2 parts. The money will have to be used by the end of 2024, and that is basically what everybody that is working on this knows.
Councilwoman Fry. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, that being said, I think that everybody has had something to say tonight, and if they have an idea, they can email it to you or to me, and we can present them to the committee the next time we have a committee meeting. And I was going to say that we can do this each week if people want to, if they have suggestions or want to discuss something further. But at this particular point, it is it's just ideas. That's it. We don't have anywhere else to go with it. I mean, we don't have anything further to explain. And Mr. Heidick, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. My question for this portion would be for the mayor and for Director Flaker. Once this money is bestowed upon us and guidelines are given, will basically a budget workbook detailing how the money is going to be spent be presented to council for approval?
Well, I think once we get that guidance, I think we have to come up with the ideas that were presented by council and administration and everyone, and really work together on what this plan consists of. And then once we figure out, okay, these are kind of like our priorities, what we want to use this money for, we can work on seeing what the cost of all this would be involved. And maybe not an official budget workbook, but maybe put together a spreadsheet listing out the various projects or programs or items that we would want to do and the cost associated with each and how it would be accounting for all the money.
And I understand, Mr. Flaker, that most of this will actually end up in your office as far as the budgeting, correct? I mean, you will probably be the one to prepare a spreadsheet and all of those things. And you will know the guidelines. Since it is Treasury money, you will know what we are allowed to do and what we aren't allowed to do. And you've had a lot of experience now with all the other COVID money.
Yeah, like I said, I'll be the one bringing to council the appropriation. Once we receive the money, I'll be coming to council for the appropriation once we figure out what we want to do with it. I know with the CARES Act, they gave us a very short time frame to begin with. We kind of had to get it spent very quickly, so we had to act quickly. And then that it didn't help the guidance changing week in, week out. So I truly do hope once they issue the guidance, it's like the mayor said, I hope here's the guidance. Now go forth and spend it on what the guidance allows. That way we can develop a good plan and go with that plan that benefits the city the best. Yeah, I'll be the one keeping track of everything because that money is going to be audited. If it's going to be the state auditors, independent auditors, heck, with the money coming directly from the federal government, it could be the federal government. So I'm going to have to make sure that all the records are accounted for, all the copies of the checks, all the invoices, if it has to go through a bidding process, depending on the amount of the contract, does it have to go through council? So I'm going to have to make sure the ordinances are all accounted for. So all that stuff I'm going to have to keep track of. That way, if we do get audited by anyone, we can hand over all those records and show the logic behind why we spent it on what we did and why it meets those criteria.
If I'm correct, that money has to be expended by the end of 2024, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Correct.
Right. With the injection of we just keep saying the number 16 million, so we'll just continue with that. With 16 million, I would just like to see that over the next 3.5 years that we put together basically an action plan that can be presented and adhered to, and not have to keep doing ordinance after ordinance, asking for allocation after allocation. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's a legitimate way of doing it, but an actual plan to disperse per year, separate from the budget, obviously, because it has to be accounted for separate, like Director Flaker stated, that we develop some sort of plan and adhere to it instead of drawing off it here and there and every other week having an ordinance to take this and that. Just my opinion. So I thank you all for that.
Oh,
Thank you.
Councilman Heidick, I completely agree with you. I don't want to have like 20 different ordinances appropriating this dollar amount, that dollar amount. I would prefer to come to council once we come up with our plan and say, hey, we want to appropriate this much if we can use it on wages, and we want to appropriate this much for capital improvement. We want to appropriate this much for operations and maintenance. I would like to do it in one pass. Makes it cleaner for everyone involved. That way council's not bogged down with 20 different ordinances. It also makes it easier come audit time to be able to hand over one ordinance to the auditors and to show that ordinance to them on how we appropriated the money, and then they could compare the appropriations to the expenditures.
Mr. Flaker.
Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Flaker, are you on the committee?
Yes.
Okay. Who else is on the committee? Do we have a list? Can council have a list of who's on the committee?
Yeah, the committee includes myself, Mr. Flaker, Mr. Tracy, Mr. Hunt, Suzanne Allen, Dr. Allen from the foundation, Mr. Fogel from the foundation, Mr. Little from the foundation, Mr. Wagner from DCDC, and Mr. Ramnitz from the schools.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think we need more discussion. I want, great ideas, and everything's on the table. That's the important thing. So I'll send those minutes out and those to get the ideas flowing for council. But, just imagine this, you get notice that you're going to get this amount of money, and all you know is the amount of money you're going to get, when the first check's coming approximately, when the second check's coming approximately. You have to spend it by a certain date. And even with that, we're not sure if it has to be just encumbered or if it has to be actually checks cut and spent. And then you've got some general guidelines. So if you think over the next 3 years or so, to get the money, create a plan, get estimates, engineering, whatever the project or plan is, to actually go out for bid, to get things passed through council, to have the program or project start and inspected and completed, and then doing an audit trail that entire time, that's going to take up a lot of time. So we're going to be very, very busy, and it's not just Barberton. Basically, everyone's going to be doing this. So I think that we stand to do a lot of great things, and this is in addition to all the AMATS funding that we secure that shall be coming in over the next few years. So, that's why, we can talk about infrastructure, and Councilwoman Angela, if I want to talk to you about your idea, because we've been working on that for a number of years now. But infrastructure for the main arteries is basically taken care of with AMATS. But let's look at what else we can do. And let's take a project, an idea, and say, well, if we only pay for half of it and we can get the other half paid from another source, now we've just stretched more money to do more projects. So it's going to be a real juggling act. And council has to be involved. And I've set up weekly meetings because they could come out tonight with updates. We just don't know. So I said, hey, let's get this on everyone's calendar. And so we're all prepared. So whenever something happens, we've already got a meeting set up. We've got ideas generated. We've had discussions. So we've canceled the meetings because there's been no updates. So we'll send that information out to you. And then once information comes out, which, the first check's due in May. So I've got to assume that the guidelines come out pretty quickly here. So I think this is going to move quick over the next 3 years, but it's going to be a very busy 3 years.
Thank you.
I'm hoping that infrastructure could also cover the cost to Director Hunt to help overhaul the development code. That would be a nice infrastructure project.
Okay, I think that.
Yeah, I think that could go along.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Yeah, I would like to just end our discussion for this evening. As I said, I hope that we have one after every council meeting, if time allows, to get everyone updated on what we are doing and to generate more ideas. But I said at the beginning that I didn't want it to go over a half hour because actually I think we could probably talk all night. But that being said, I'm handing the meeting back over to President Medges.
Okay, right before we left, I believe Mr. Griffin had his hand up.
Yeah. Thank you,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Mattis. That's okay. First of all, I want to thank Mr. Tracy, Charlie Reese, David Sykes, all the guys over there, and the building inspectors and stuff like that. I got another house cleaned up, a yard cleaned up this week. Really looks good. They sent me pictures of it. And I also was able to get a tree cut down on Austin Drive that was causing flooding up there because it was blocking the sewer inlet and the street was flooding. So we got that taken care of. And I just want to thank everybody that was involved. We still got a lot to go. And as far as South Van Buren, I've been working on that, I think, before I even got on council. And the mayor and I have been talking about sidewalks and curbs. I even think we had a start date, I think it was last year, but then we got the budget shortfall, COVID. It's just one thing after another, but that would be a good idea, real good. And Mrs. Fennell, she passed on. She brought that up to me years ago about coming into Barberton. How does it look? And I brought it up to the mayor. I said, boy, people coming out of New Franklin, they see this, and it's got to be improved. And that would really be good for our community to attract more businesses and to give people, a sense of pride, to what they're doing, that we're doing something to really improve, the street. And also this Saturday, I'll be doing cleanup at Everly Webb Park at 8 a.m. I have some people, but anyone wants to come down, we're going to clean that up best we can for a couple hours or so and see how it goes. With that, thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to speak.
No problem. Anybody else before we go?
Mr. President?
Yep, go ahead.
I'd like to piggyback after Mr. Griffin about the improvements over there on Snydertown area. If you guys remember in the last year's council meeting, I said, that side of the area, that ward, Mr. Griffin's at Ward 3 needs a lot of improvements. And people coming in from New Franklin, coming from Portage Lakes, coming to Barberton, see that first. And we get big improvements with that. And it'd be great to see that improvement. Second of all, Mr. Vevik, you're absolutely right about the communication. We're all on the same team here. We got to communicate better. I've been pushing that from day one. We lack in communication, and we want to make the best decisions for the city. But to do that on the same team, we need to communicate as a team. And I fully agree with you, and hopefully we can improve that from our council members and department heads. And also Mr. Griffin brought up the building department. You guys are doing an excellent job. Mr. Reese and Kyle, you guys are on the A team. You guys are doing great work going around in my ward personally. I want to thank you guys for that. And I I sent an email out to Mrs. Price on Friday for resolutions for summer. She was a dog that passed away, John Yarsa and Laura Wyden Yarsa. That's the owner of the summer. She was very well known in the community, and I want to thank Price for moving forward. All the information we need and get a resolution for summer. Dog that board up 3-4 times a week. She'll be missed, and the kids loved her. And prayers for John and his family. And with that, I pass, Mr. President. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. President.
Mr. Greer.
Just real quick, just to tap on this one more time. This Saturday, April 24th, is Take Pride in Barberton Day. It's self-ran. The city parks put out a post about anybody wanting to do this. Just reach out to them, their phone number, or Edgar@cityofbarberton.com. That's Sam Edgar over there. To coordinate, they'll give you materials to go out. I will personally be out with a pretty large group. I just want to give a shout out to a local business. A1 Dumpsters reached out, said they wanted to help in that area. On Fairview Avenue, they're going to be putting a dumpster out on that in Fairview inside their parking lot. So if you're in that area, or any of your constituents are in that area with some trash that maybe they picked up downtown, he's willing to take it there. He said nothing that's going to stick them or blow them up in the tires. So with that, just hope to see a whole bunch of people out. Can't wait till we get out of this COVID stuff, because actually enjoyed this day. We all got together at Tusk Park for lunch and food and stories. So with that, I pass.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 7:45.
Good night to all.
Yep.
Good night,
everybody.
Good night.
Hey, Justin.
Yes, sir.
What was the address where that dumpster is going to be?
It's right across the street from Malco.
Oh, okay.
You know where they store all the vans at? I'm not quite sure the address.
Yes.
But he said it would be right inside that gate area. So
okay.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't really. He just said anybody was in the area that wanted to drop trash that way. I do know. I don't know if the parks are doing it still. But usually we would get a hold of the parks and then tell them where trash bags were at.
Yeah, they pick it up.
I don't know if they're still doing that. Actually, didn't ask. But if not, or if you're in an area or need an extra place to put stuff, there will be a dumpster that way.
I'm still online here with you guys.
All right.
I'll look into the other sites.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Director.
Okay, thank you.
What I said earlier when I was cutting out an awful lot, when you guys get those big reports in your email from the department heads, if you want me to print them for you and just throw them in your mailboxes, I'm more than happy to do that. I print one copy out, so it's basically run it into the copier, push a button, throw it in a slot. You know, no big deal, but I know home printers, the cartridges are killer expensive. So if you need
I take one for Parks and Rec. You can put one in the Parks and Rec box.
I can do this. No problem.
Thank you.
Can I go now?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.